Very good. Well, thank you for taking the time to work on your financial empowerment. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you all. My name is Irene Kelly or Irene Kelly, and I am the Financial Education and Inclusion Manager here at Weave. And today we're going to be covering the first part of Weave's Financial Empowerment course. This is going to be a space for you to focus on what matters most to you, what you want to change within your relationship with money, and also for you to think about. I know there's a couple business owners here in the room. I want to be very intentional about using this space to think about you personally, right? I think sometimes we gravitate towards the finances of our business. I want to encourage you to take this space to focus on your finances, because ultimately that's where you're going to see what do you want to do as a business owner? How much do you want to make, right? That all comes from our personal finances. So with that said, let's take a moment to get to know each other. I would like to learn a little bit more about what brought you to the class, particularly when you think about your relationship with money. I want us to start asking ourselves the question, how do you want to feel when it comes to your finances? So take a moment, take a deep breath, and please share either in the chat, or you're welcome to unmute yourself and share your name and what would you like to feel when it comes to your finances.
I can speak.
Yes, Janice, welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
What I would like to feel with my finances is that I, for one, am growing them, with being able to cover all my bases, cover all my bills, all my supplies, and just keep going and not feel like I'm breaking even. I would like to feel like my financials match my skill level, so that I'm able
Amen.
to acquire the type of money that I know I rightfully deserve because I work hard for it. I'm passionate, and that's what I want at this point.
Janice, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
And I want you to really what's coming up for you all, keep it very close to you, right? If you can write it down, that's ideal, because ultimately this is where it all starts, right? When we decide this is how I want to feel with my money, and then we're going to reverse engineer, right? What do we need to do to get you there?
Okay.
Thank you, Janice. I see some people sharing in the chat. Thank you. Sonia is sharing. I would like to feel comfortable and happy when it comes to finances. Find those words, right, that describe how you want to feel. Then we have Tracy. I would like to feel free from burden, stress-free, means to be and do more in all aspects of my life. Yes, right? Similar to what we were sharing, right? Feeling like we're not only making ends meet, but we have much more. We can create, we can focus on our craft, we can be stress-free. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. I see Eleanor, I would like to feel confident. Oh, I love that word. And in control of my finances. So please make sure to have pen and paper nearby and write those words, right? Again, we're going to reverse engineer, hopefully getting us to that space. Jenny also sharing. Thank you, Jenny. I would like to be very clear with my finances. Amen. So thank you for sharing all of these pieces. Amy also sharing. I would love to learn some about financial investment if possible. Amy, in this class, we do focus on financial future. We don't dive as deep as I would like to in terms of investing. However, we provide that framework for you to know, okay, what do I want to accomplish in the future? And then from there, you can decide which types of financial vehicles can get you there. Meaning, is this something that I save for? Is it something that I could actually invest for because I have more time to achieve that goal? So that is the extent of the conversation we're going to have. for that conversation, especially for next Tuesday, when we talk more about financial future, that is where we're going to do a deeper dive in this arena. However, I do encourage you to start building a team of financial professionals, particularly investment advisors, that can help more in that space. But with that said, we do have a lot of ground to cover. So I want us to kind of go through our agenda to ground ourselves before diving into our content. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about what is financial empowerment. And we're going to divide this topic into, if we think about financial empowerment as a journey, we're going to divide it into our financial past, our financial present. That encompasses our numbers, debt and credit. And then we're going to talk about our financial future and how we can integrate everything that we learned in a financial plan. So the financial plan is that vehicle that ultimately is going to help us decide, oh, this is something that I want to invest for, this is something that I need to save for. And it provides a lot of clarity in our financial lives. And we're going to wrap up with final comments. Today, we might get to the first 4 pieces within the agenda. So at any point, feel free to ask questions. I'm going to have a couple of stops along the way, but you don't have to wait until the end of session 2 to ask questions. So this is meant to be a space where I want to hear from you and what's coming up for you as well. As I was sharing, this is a space where I'm asking you to really focus on what is important for you. And in that process requires us to be open, be vulnerable. Therefore, we want to make sure that we cover a couple of ground rules for this space that we have created. First and foremost, respect, right? Respect yourself, even when sometimes we make comments about our own ability to manage our finances. Sometimes we can negative self-talk can come in. So I'm going to ask you, be respectful of yourself, be respectful of the journey that brought you here and the fact that you have that initiative to get more resources in your financial journey. And obviously respecting others. Very, very important. That's going to be the base of this beautiful space that we're creating together. Secondly, no judgment. There's a lot of biases, a lot of shame sometimes that come attached to our financial lives. So it's going to be very important for us to take this from an objective perspective and not judge each other, not judge ourselves, because we are doing the best we can with what we've got. So no judgment here. Third piece, confidentiality. The only thing that we can take from this space is the lessons we learned. If somebody shares something, we forget about the name. We just take the lessons that we're learning from each other. Fourth, for us to do this work, for us to truly envision that financial life we want for ourselves, we have to be honest. Right? And sometimes honesty might feel a little uncomfortable. I want to encourage you to just really use this space to, I'd like to call it name it to tame it, right? We're not going to be able to tame things that we're not naming and we're not being straightforward with. So I'm going to encourage everyone to be honest with ourselves, with each other. And lastly, support. This is a space that connects with WIV's mission of economic equity. Right? Creating a more just and equitable society for everyone, especially for women, requires us to work together. So in this space, I want to encourage you to reach out for help if you need it and be there for each other, right? When we're listening, when we're sharing, if a resource comes to mind, make sure that you remember that these spaces are made for us to be able to support each other in our financial empowerment journeys. You're not alone in your journey. So we want to make sure that you get all the support that you need along the way. Are there any other ground rules, any other values that you would like to add to this space for you to feel more comfortable and for you to feel comfortable and confident sharing and learning? Anything you don't see here that you want to add? Please feel free to use the chat or mute yourself if something comes up. If anything comes to mind throughout the session today and next Tuesday, please let me know, okay? Very good. So let's dive in, right? When it comes to the word financial empowerment, please feel free to share in the chat. When you look at the word empowerment by itself, what comes to mind? Are there any specific things that come to mind? Any other words that you would associate with empowerment? Strong. Yes, I love that. Independent. Yes, abundance. One that always comes to me is confident, right? When we think about the dictionary definition of empowerment, we have seen that empowerment is this process of becoming more confident in our own abilities, right? In our own strengths. And when we attach the financial piece to this process, it's really about us feeling strong, feeling confident, feeling able to take control of our finances. When it comes to empowerment in action, we like to divide it into 3 areas, right? The first piece, financial mindset, and we're going to dive into these 3 areas during the course. But if we think about the process of trusting ourselves, trusting our own abilities, being in like you're all sharing in the chat, like feeling independent, being in this abundance mindset, it all starts right here. It all starts with us and our way of thinking. That's why our financial mindset can be one of the biggest obstacles in our financial empowerment journey. So we're gonna be uncovering that component of our financial empowerment while we're together. The other piece is goals and priorities, right? For us to trust our own abilities to manage our money, it's important that we understand why are we managing our money, right? What do we want to do with it? How is it helping us accomplish what means most to us? So that's why we want to position your goals and your priorities at the center of your financial life. That way, money becomes this resource to get you where you want to get to. Money is not the end, is a means. And lastly, financial basics. I like to think of our economy. We think of our economy. Learning financial basics is like speaking the language of our economy. When we don't understand how the economy works, how are we going to thrive? How are we going to succeed, right? We need to understand how the economy and how our financial system works so that we can take advantage of it and it can work for us. So these are the 3 pieces that I'm going to be coming back to during our time together. And please, if at any point you have any questions, speak up, share in the chat. Now, when we start this journey, a lot of us already have a lot of financial basics and a lot of mindset components in our own empowerment journey. So it's usually helpful to start this journey by reflecting on, okay, how do I think about money? What's my way of thinking about money? So that is where we're talking about mindset. Mindset, period, is a person's way of thinking and their opinions. Oh, hold on. Whomever is unmuted, please make sure to mute yourself. Thank you. Because we want to limit background noise. But if at any point you want to share or ask a question, please unmute yourself, okay? So when we think about financial mindset, it's really the way we think about money, right? Your opinions about money. And our mindset can really be seen through how we navigate our financial past, how we're navigating our financial present, and what we think about our financial future, what we think we're capable of, right? Like really thinking about that abundance coming to us, right? I love what Jenny shared about, hey, getting paid what I should be getting paid, right? Being valued for our work. We have to believe it for it to happen, right? So it all starts with our minds. So there's a lot of power here. And I forgot to share with you all that before I joined Wave, I was a financial advisor. And I can't tell you how many times I worked with clients that had the financial means, but they didn't have the right mindset. And they would not put their money to work. They would not be, and they were unhappy with their financial situation because the mindset piece wasn't there. So let's not underestimate the importance of our mindset when it comes to our financial journey. So you're going to hear me coming back to the mindset piece because it's something that it's like the elephant in the room. You know, sometimes we don't address it and it can be the biggest obstacle in our path. So I'm going to encourage you to use this space, and outside this space, reflect. Continue asking yourself, hey, are my opinions about money healthy? Right? Are my opinions about money hurting me in any way? This is when the concept of self-talk. Have you all heard about the concept of self-talk, or money self-talk, to be more specific? It's this voice in our head that sometimes comes up when we're looking at our numbers, and when we're thinking about money, when we're thinking about getting paid, charging for our services, right? Sometimes we have this narrative in our head that says, oh, you can't do that. Oh, you're not good at it. Oh, that's not your area that's not your strength. Be very cautious with that voice, right? And when you hear that voice, it's important for us to separate it from our actual capabilities, our actual abilities, and our actual potential. Because ultimately that voice, it's a product of our environment, our culture, our upbringing, our society, right? That voice is our mindset. So we have to be very inquisitive, right? I like to think it's not about judging the mindset, it's about understanding it and identifying what parts of it can we start questioning, right? Because ultimately, this is within our control. It just requires a lot of reflection, awareness, and that ongoing process of, hey, taking control. So in this space, I would like to pause here and have a little reflection, right? I was just sharing with you all that our mindset has been forming unconsciously since we were very, very little. So it's important for us to identify, okay, where have you learned most of what you know about money? If it's at home, right? Please feel free to share in the chat. What about school? It could also be a combination, right? Friends and family, work, the internet, through resources like Weave and other organizations. I'm seeing in the chat, parents, okay. C&D, Sonia, what's C&D? Tell me. Or if somebody else knows what C&D is. Janice, yes, a ver. Okay, I see. Yes.
I learned most about what I know about money. I would say when I started practicing and saw how appreciative people were about the services that I was offering, and this started for me at a very young age. I won't say that I understood the gravity of my potential at that time, but I would have to say that it was that entrepreneurial spirit early on that helped me to realize it, and at this point, being a single parent, I've just been able to manifest it. Now I just need to manifest more. That's it.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
And I want to also thank everyone that's sharing in the chat, right? A lot of you through friends and family, through work, home life, other resources, that's fantastic. Mostly self-thought through life experience. Absolutely. There's this phrase in Spanish. I'm originally from Mexico, and we have this phrase of like, breaking things is how you learn, or making mistakes is how you learn. And that self-thought reminds me of the mistakes that we make along the way, and that's how we learn. So,
No, you go eat yours.
sorry, so who wants to share? I heard a little voice. Let's see. Okay, feel free to unmute if you want to share. Also see home. Yes. So you see how it's such an interesting combination, right? Because we are also always learning. We're always absorbing information. So that's why it's so important for us to be aware of what we're learning and also what we might need to unlearn. So that's a very big piece. Be grateful for everything we have learned, right? Be very careful with what we need to unlearn. Particularly when we think about friends and family, sometimes we learn things that might not be accurate anymore. Our system is constantly changing. So I remember what we said about no judgment. This is a moment of no judgment. I don't want no one calling their parents being like, hey, you ruined me. What you taught me wasn't right. No. This is about coming to a place where we're grateful for what we learned, because even from the mistakes we learned, right? Honoring that journey that brought us here. And now being very conscious of, okay, what stays, kind of doing a cleanse, right? What stays, what doesn't. And if we go back to our journey analogy, our financial past and what we have learned thus far is like that baggage that we're dragging with us in our journey. What do you want in that baggage, right? You want things that are useful. You want things that are empowering to you in your journey. You want things that you're excited about, you want to use. We don't want things that are bringing us down, right? So those are the things that as you reflect on your financial journey, as you reflect on your financial past specifically, it's very important to go back to those principles we shared at the beginning, those ground rules, right? Being honest, respectful of yourself, of your past, and really being mindful of not judging, right? I like to think our family, our friends, they did the best with what they've got, with what they had, right? Our parents did the best with what they had. So it's important for us to honor that and now take control, because this is our journey. No one else is going to be in the driver's seat but ourselves. So take a moment also to honor and celebrate the fact that you're here, taking control of that journey and learning and getting more things in your suitcase for this trip. So now we're going to do a little deeper of a reflection when it comes to our financial past. So we're talking about, okay, this is what I've learned in my past. This is where I might have learned it from. But now it's important for us to take a moment to better understand our financial past. Research shows that at the age of 3, we are already absorbing financial behaviors that we're going to repeat as adults. It's very important for us to take this journey with a lot of compassion and a lot of patience, because this takes time. This takes energy. So this is going to be part of that homework that I want to leave for you, right? To really reflect on the following questions. This is something that if you share finances with someone else, these are things that are important to talk about, because this is how we start understanding our mindset, our fears, and also sometimes our lack of that abundance mindset might be coming from our financial past. So the first question I would like to encourage you to ask yourself, how were finances handled in your home during childhood? And again, here we want to honor the whole thing, right? The good and the bad. Another important question, and I encourage you to write these questions down, right? And keep the reflection going. I've been doing this work I've been with WIF for over 3 years, and every time we talk about this class, things come up, right? So this is not like it's homework and then we're done. This is an ongoing reflection, right? Like they say, life is a lifelong learning journey, right? This is a lifelong learning journey to continue reflecting on that and growing from that financial past. Second, very important question, what money management lessons did you learn growing up? If you take a moment, I want you to write down if there's anything in particular that's coming up for you. start writing it down. And then once we go through the 4 questions, I want to open the space in case anybody has anything that you feel comfortable sharing. The 3rd question, and this is starting to connect heavily to our mindset. What fears and feelings towards money did you absorb growing up? This is a question where sometimes we start identifying fear towards not making ends meet, right? Fear towards debt, right? Towards credit. So it's important for us to name those pieces of those fears and those feelings so that we can connect the dots and identify why sometimes we have certain financial behaviors right now in our financial present. They deeply connect to the answers to these questions. And the 4th question, what achievements and financial challenges did you experience growing up? And again, this is going to be an ongoing reflection, right? Lifelong learning journey, our financial life is. So in this space, I want you to take a moment and start connecting when you think about money now, right? If you have any strong opinions about money, how does that connect with some of these questions? Is there anything specific as we were asking these questions? Is there anything specific that came up for you that you think might be relevant to share with the group? Minute while you finish kind of jotting down, writing down what came up for you, what resonated with you. Does anybody want to share? Janice, yes, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. These are really wonderful questions. And one thing I was thinking of, like the attitude I learned from my parents was, especially my dad, that making money has to be really hard. Like he used to have a saying that, you could dig the ground, you can dig, but you won't have any money coming out of it. So I realized I developed that attitude that I feel like, work has to be really hard. So when I make money and I didn't work very hard, like I'll feel guilty, like, oh, that was kind of easy, So it was just very insightful. So thank you for these questions.
Jenny, thank you so much for sharing. I love that. I absolutely love that. It's such a beautiful thing for us to debunk because it is a myth. It doesn't have to be that hard, right? I love that you share that. Thank you so much. It reminded me of the
Jenny.
phrase, money doesn't grow on trees. Did
Yeah.
you all hear that growing up? There we go. Tracy.
Jenny, when you shared, I was thinking to myself on the flip side, I work harder instead of easier because I feel like that's what I have to do. I'm just not using my own time and resources well enough because I can't figure out how to put that together financially plus, achieving and working.
Very powerful. Thank you for sharing. I see also Eleanor in the chat. I learned the importance of paying bills on time. My mom also taught me about the importance of saving money for emergencies. What a wonderful thing to have learned. Like that would be a phone call for mom. Mom, thank you, right? If you still have her. And wherever they are, we're sending gratitude, right? I think it's such a powerful exercise to reflect on the journey of other people that allowed us to get to where we are, right?
Can I say one more thing?
Of course, Tracy.
As I was writing down and listening to, I realized that I did get a lot of great financial things growing up, like build really great credit, save, budget, plan, things like that. And that's what I took. But the underlying fact that I think bothers me the most now, which is really relevant to the fact that this is a women empowering group here, venture, is that I was told by my father that I would not be able to support myself. I would need a man to support me. I would need to find someone who would want to bear the burden of me and my financial burden. my college cost a lot, so there were student loans. So it was, well, you won't be able to do it yourself, so you'll need to find somebody to help you. There'll be no way that you can do it yourself. And then each candidate was told, yes, are you sure you want that? Because it's a big burden. So that right there is like a really, that whole masculine feminine pull of, I grew up in the 70s and 80s. So
Tracy, thank you for naming. This is a name it to tame it moment, right? As I like to say, because ultimately the reason why organizations like Weave exist is because we don't live in an equitable society yet, right? We're not gonna rest until we do, right? And what you just shared, Tracy, it's unfortunately it's so common, right? It's so common to hear about that mentality, and it's a product of our environment. It's a product of the society we live in, right? And I think there's a lot of healing that needs to take place, not only economically, but in our end of things when we have experienced those types of mindsets. How do we, right? How do we say, thank you, let me prove you wrong, right? Let me show you. Let me show
that
you.
actually has been my life. So my life choice from that commentary for so long was, yeah, thanks, but I'm going to prove you wrong. And so I've managed to pay all my student debt by myself, take care of myself. I actually take care of all my family, 3 of us. I am the main breadwinner. And it's not because I want to be necessarily like force my husband not to be, but I chose a good career. I chose something I can make a lot of money at. It's still confusing for me, and I kind of want to share it more equal with my husband and not be the only one. I'm kind of at that point now, but I definitely took it and ran with, I'll prove you wrong.
And Weave serves people of all gender identities, right? So if at any point you're like, hey, I want my partner to be in my same wavelength, invite them to take these courses, right? So that you can have those conversations, because ultimately to be in that equitable society, it's important for us to share sometimes the responsibility, or even just the mental burden of being the breadwinner, right? Sometimes we just want to share that, share it with your kids so they know, they learn early on. Okay, there's so much value. And there's this research that shows that taking care of your own finances, like really being responsible when it comes to your money, that can have the equivalent in terms of what you save when you're responsible, the equivalent of a part-time job. Like that to me is wow, right? Like if we're responsible, if we're on top of things, we're making money because we are taking care of what we've got. So sharing that and talking about normalizing money conversations at home, I think it's key in that process as well. So thank you. Thank you all for sharing. Anybody else wants to share before we move forward? I invite you to keep the reflection going, right? And again, be very compassionate with yourselves, especially when we start looking at all the dark side of our financial past. There's a lot of light that we can take out of that darkness, right? So it's important to honor both sides and celebrate the journey that got you to where you are. So once we continue this reflection, I want to take a moment to share this quotation with you. And this is an author. His name is Yung Pueblo. I just read one of his books. The name is escaping me, but I'll bring the name of that book back to you all. But I love this phrase. He says, "We reclaim our power by understanding our past and by intentionally living our present. This helps us build our future by choosing to make wise actions today." I love how he says understanding our past, right? Like it is what it is. What can we learn about it, right? What about it makes us stronger, right? So please take these with a lot of compassion, this reflection journey. And then I also see in the chat, money controlled others. Money is a source of power, right? And it can be also a source of control. So that's a big piece when we talk about economic equity, and we can start seeing abuse of power and people misusing money to control others. We do have to name that, right? Especially if anybody saw that growing up, if anybody has seen that still around you, it's something that we need to speak up about. Because ultimately, money again is just the means, right? And when it comes to sharing money with others, it's key for us to, particularly in family dynamics, to make sure that even if somebody is not contributing financially, right, the unpaid work that people do, we need to honor that. And both individuals in a partnership need to have their financial goals, right? Need to feel honored, seen, and respected. Because we all have financial journeys. Sometimes we might have money coming in and sometimes we might not. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be honored and respected in our own financial journey. So again, take this journey with a lot of compassion, and hopefully this starts a lot of healthy and constructive conversations within your financial life, and particularly if you share finances with others. So that was kind of that piece of navigating and starting to reflect on our financial past. As we saw, when we start on better understanding our financial past, that's when we can be much more intentional when it comes to our financial present, because we understand ourselves a little better. We understand the voices in our head a little better. And we also understand when we start thinking about our habits, our numbers, we might start seeing some connections there. The other thing that I just want to say, that caveat, your past doesn't determine who you are. Your past can prepare you for who you are becoming, right? Let's use our past, not let our past use us, if that makes sense. So let's dive into financial present. Here, there's again the component of our mindset. Then we have the component of our habits, which we're going to be talking more about, and our numbers. So notice how numbers don't come out yet, right? First, we need to identify what's happening within our mindset, and that includes what we think about numbers. What we think about sitting down and reviewing those financial statements, right? So it all starts with our financial mindset. And here, when it comes to your financial present, I think before I dive into habits, I think this is an important place to honor how do you feel now, right? We talked about that. We set up that intention at the beginning of our class about how we want to feel. So here is a moment to have a little check-in, a very honest check-in with yourselves. How do you currently feel when it comes to your money? You're welcome to write it down. If any words come up, feel free to share in the chat. This is a space where I notice, I hear from clients that sometimes we are in this process of valuing ourselves enough to earn what we should be earning, enough to control our own money, enough to have a say in how we manage money, particularly within a partnership. So this is a piece that I really encourage you to not only reflect on, but really start working on yourself, start taking better care of yourself, and start really kind of shifting that narrative when you hear that negative voice saying, no, oh no, you shouldn't charge for that. No, that's too much. No, are you that good? Like when we're judging ourselves, when we're not valuing ourselves, that is, I like to kind of have imagine like a stop sign, right? Like stop sign, because that's something where we know, oh, that's my mindset, right? And that comes from a society that has oppressed women in many ways. So you're not alone in that journey. If that is the case for you, you're not alone in that journey. And I invite you to continue speaking up about it, because the more we speak up about it, again, we have to name it so we can tame it, right? And understanding that we're not alone, understanding that it also comes from an inequitable system, then it's like, okay, makes sense that I feel like that, but that's baloney. I should not buy into that, right? Some of you are sharing sometimes not in control, not where I want to be at, and not where I feel I deserve to be at. That is such a beautiful way to frame it, right? I don't feel like I not feeling where I deserve to be at, right? And not feeling that we're there. This is what we're reverse engineering, right? Like if that's not what we want, what do we need to do with our financial with our financial empowerment journey? What do we need to do when it comes to working in our mindset, working with our habits, so that eventually we're feeling worthy, right? So thank you for naming these pieces. I'm really hoping that through our time together, you gain additional resources and you become aware of how powerful you are and how worthy you are of every single thing that you want for your financial future. It's about how do we make it happen? Oh, do I deserve it? You all deserve it. Absolutely, yes. It's about how can we make it happen for you. So thank you for being brave and for sharing those pieces. So now that you're okay, we had a little moment to reflect on how am I feeling now, okay? So this is the space where it's very important for us to talk about once we think about something. Usually the daily behaviors back up those thoughts. So this is where habits come in. I can't tell you how many times I worked with clients to prepare this amazing investment strategy, this amazing financial plan. But in the day-to-day, their behavior was not backing up that plan. So it feels like we're wasting time and energy, precious energy, planning for these things, and our day-to-day behaviors, So we need to make sure that they're aligned. And for us to do that, we're going to have a little reflection. And I'm going to share with you a couple of tips in terms of how can we create good habits and how can we challenge negative habits within our financial life. So the first step here is defining what financial habits are. Ultimately, financial habits are regular financial behaviors and conducts, right? Somebody shared that you grew up learning about paying bills on time. Eleanor shared that. Eleanor, that is a perfect example of a financial habit, right? Paying bills on time. That's a very good one. We like that one. Having a shopping list. That's also a very good one because we tend to spend way less when we have a shopping list. Saving, right? Saving automatically, saving the moment I get my paycheck, the moment I get paid, separating a little bit of money. That is a fantastic financial habit. So according to psychologist Linda Fox, every habit has 3 components. We need a learned or acquired motivation, right? Feel motivated to do something. Then we need the skill, know how to do the behavior, right? I know how to write a shopping list, right? And I'm motivated because I want to go shopping and I don't want to waste time. And lastly, a triggering factor, right? That thing that prompts you to do that behavior. Like, for example, I have my little notepad next to the fridge. So when I'm going shopping, I see that. I'm like, okay, that triggers me to actually do the list, right? So we're going to play with these components so that we can start tweaking those habits that we want to tweak. And also we can start creating new ones. And in this process, I want to just bring it to the group. What financial habits do you want to maintain? Like, what financial habits come up for you that you're like, yes, I have this habit, I'm proud of myself. And which ones might you want to change? What came up for you? Feel free to unmute or share in the chat if anything specific came to mind.
I have now trained and conditioned myself to do exactly what you had mentioned, which was to set money aside or have money taken out of my account that I don't even see. I don't even know it's there. It took me a while to get there though, because it was, again, living paycheck to paycheck and not feeling like I had enough revenue to set aside until I looked back at the numbers that were coming in and I was like, wow, that came in. Well, I didn't see it, because I had this responsibility, just staying up on it, trying to pay everything on time. So now I am and have conditioned myself to just look the other way while I grow that money. Ooh.
Mm, that's something worth celebrating, right? I
I
loved how
feel
you
good about
shared. Yes. Oh
it.
my God.
Finally. No.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And Janice or Janice? I want to pronounce it right.
Janice.
Janice. Okay. Thank you for sharing, Janice. That is such
Thank
a
you.
and that's you're reminding me of how important it is to celebrate along the way, right? I hate how finances are sometimes so connected to like negative things when in reality, no, there's a lot that we should be celebrating within our financial journeys, what we're learning, what we're also kind of like growing from. Like
Mhm.
there's a lot to celebrate. So I really encourage you to, when you're looking at your financial journey, focus on the good as well. Celebrate the good. Very important. Thank you, Janice. Someone's Eleanor sharing, I'm starting to pay off credit cards in full each month to avoid high interest rates on credit card balances. Amen to that. And one of the cool things about that is that if your credit card gives you points, miles, cashback, you're getting all those benefits and you're not paying interest. And that is working the system. I love that. I love that. That's definitely worth celebrating.
And I would like to share something that I did with a credit card.
Yes.
You know, I mentioned about the student loans. I got to a point where the student loans were getting, it was like obviously going to take forever to pay off. And I got in the mail a Discover card that was 0% for the life of the loan. And it had a credit limit that was the rest of the student loan that was left. And so I transferred the student loan onto the Discover card for 0% for the life of the loan. And all I had to do was every month I had to charge $1 on the Discover card. So I'd made myself a punch card in my wallet. Whenever I got gas, I bought a pack of gum or candy bar and punched the card to make sure every month I paid $1. And I paid $23,000 off, no interest.
See, it's all about like understanding the system so we can use
Yeah,
it to
because
our
nobody knows
advantage.
you can transfer a student loan.
That thing, right? Nobody knows. So that's why these spaces are so important, because this is about to create an equitable society. We're not going to do it by staying quiet about these things. We're going to do it by sharing, especially among women. Hey, these are the things that you should be doing, right? You should not be struggling and suffering. No, we should be using our system to our advantage, right? So thank you, Tracy, for bringing that up. That is awesome. Definitely. And I see the excitement in the chat. That's what we want. And also Susan sharing a good habit, making sure my car payment is on time. Paying things on time is key. And we're going to dive into it when we talk about credit, how important paying things on time is for our credit. But before we do that, let's come back to our habits. So I want us to think about the fact that our habits are within our control. It's tricky, right? Janice reminded us, right? It takes a little bit of time sometimes, but it's absolutely doable. If you set your mind to it, you're going to accomplish it. So here are the pieces that I want to share with you in terms of more direct tips that can help you, particularly starting with creating a good habit. This framework is based out of a very cool book. I think the author, his name is James Pierce. I remember. We're gonna come back to it in the resources when we share them at the end of class. But the name of his book is Atomic Habits. Highly recommend this book. It's a wonderful resource. And he shares a couple of tips to create good habits in general. Today, we're gonna apply that framework to creating good financial habits. So the first piece, like anything, right? Take inventory. Become self-aware of your current habits. All, right? The good, the not so good. And a good place to identify these habits, it's our actual numbers, right? When you're looking at financial statements, when you're looking at where is your money going, are there any trends there? That's where we can start seeing some of the habits in action. So the first step, he says, be intentional with the habit you want to build. For example, if we want to build the habit of automatic savings, right? When we're talking about self-worth, I think a piece that I've seen helps a lot in that journey of our self-worth is paying yourself. And paying yourself doesn't only mean, okay, I'm making money every month and then I'm just spending it. No, like that's paying myself. No, because that money has already uses. No, it's not necessarily only for you. When I talk about paying yourself, I mean set money aside for your future self, right? For any emergencies, for your peace of mind, for your retirement, for anything that is important to you. When we set that money aside, that is paying yourself. That is what I mean. So if we were to say, hey, I want to build a habit of saving saving first, instead of saving last, saving first. Okay. So now we're being very intentional with the habit we want to build. The second step is use something that he calls habit stacking. So if we want to add a new behavior, it's going to be easier to add it if we think about something we're already doing that connects to that behavior. For example, this is on the outside world. If you say, hey, I want to every night before going to bed, I want to apply some lotion. I never apply lotion in my bed. I just go to bed. What could help you? Okay, what habit do you have before going to bed? Oh, I brush my teeth. Okay, so you already have that habit. Let's stack on top of that habit this new habit. So right next to your toothbrush, to your toothpaste, that's where you're going to put your lotion for your face. So it's easy. You're making the behavior easy and you're stacking it to something that you're already doing. So let's go back to our example of what we want to start saving first. Let's say that you already have the habit that every time you get that paycheck, if you're receiving regular paychecks, or every Monday morning, let's say that every Monday morning you have the habit of looking at your accounts just to make sure that everything is okay. You're already accessing the accounts. So that might be a good habit to utilize to stack this saving habit. So you can say, okay, Mondays, if I'm already in the habit of checking my account, that might be the best time to separate a little bit of money there to my new account. That is habit stacking. The other piece is design your environment. Make the cues of good habits obvious and visible, like my example, right, of the putting lotion on every night. How can you design an environment that it makes that new habit obvious? So for example, if you have online banking, designing your environment could be making sure that you have a savings account that is connected to your online banking so that you could easily transfer money to it, right? That would be designing your environment. Another example here, with a very good habit to have is to have a financial check-in once a month, right? Where you're looking at everything. You have I like to call it a date with your financial life, where you really sit down and look at all of your numbers. If that's something that you want to create for yourself, how can you design an environment that allows you to do that, right? Maybe having a space within your home where you have a little vision board there, where you have, like, even when you're thinking about something like a financial check-in, I was just telling a client, make it enjoyable, right? Bring snacks, bring a glass of wine, put some music in the background, and have that financial date with your money, right? It doesn't have to be boring and gloomy. You can make it something that you enjoy. So make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. That's at the end how our psyche works, right? We want things to be attractive and exciting. So how can we make these good habits we want to create attractive, easy, and satisfying? Any questions here? I see Susan in the chat. I have the change of what I spend every day goes into my savings. Sometimes it's only 3 cents, but it adds up. It definitely adds up. That's a great habit. I love that. And how important it is for us to leverage technology, right? Technology can make our lives so much easier. There are apps like for what Susan is sharing, right? I think that what's the app? It's automatically done. Susan, do you use a specific app? I remember there was an app. I don't know if it's Robinhood or which app, but there are different platforms, different technologies for us to look into so that we don't have to do everything ourselves, right? Particularly when we're talking about saving. Automatic savings can help you create those good habits, and it's easy peasy. Susan shared it's through the bank account. That's another piece, right? Sometimes we might already have these tools, but we don't know about them. So check with your bank. What type of features do they have that you might not be utilizing? And they can help you create those good habits. So that's about good habits. But what if we have a bad habit that we want to change? That's what we're going to talk about now. So how do we break a bad habit? So the first thing is reduce exposure. So I'm going to use a very common example, unfortunately, online shopping, right? So especially like social media shopping, right? Like you're just there working on your thing and then you see all these products, all this temptation. So how do we, let's say we want to break the habit of online shopping or spending money without really thinking it through. We just see something and one-click shopping. Let's call it one-click shopping. Our bad habit might be that one-click shopping. The first thing to break a bad habit is reduce exposure. So if we wanted to reduce exposure, what I would say, hey, either you minimize your time that's spent in online shopping, or you start reducing your exposure, saying, for example, start every time you see ads, you can say, hey, I find these I sometimes click on those ads and I'm like, I find this offensive. It's offensive to my financial life, it's not, I should not be spending money on this. So you can take those ads away. That's one example of how we can reduce exposure. Or, for example, people that say, my bad habit is that I buy coffee every day and it's adding up. Well, reduce exposure. If you're stopping by on your way to work, can you take a different route where you're not passing by that store that you like to stop at, right? Reduce exposure. If you don't see it, it's going to be easier to not repeat that behavior. Then remove the cues of your bad habits from your environment. One thing that I've done personally, I share this openly with you all, for online shopping, I no longer have my credit card information in my phone. So if I want to buy something, I have to manually input all of the things. So that it immediately prompts me to like, I know, I'm not going to do it, right? Or at least I have a moment to think about, right? I have to go get my wallet. So reduce those cues that make easy the behavior, right? Another example is, or another step, switch for a new behavior. So instead of online shopping, or instead of doing that, what am I going to do, right? For example, when we're talking about the coffee piece, right? What's going to be that new behavior? You bring coffee ingredients, you make it in your office, and you make this new little moment when you arrive to the office, right? The whole office smells delicious because you're making your tea or coffee there, right? That's like creating a new behavior. Substitute it. Otherwise, our brains crave that previous behavior. So making sure that you switch it for a new behavior, it's very, very important. And opposite to what we were sharing earlier, right? Make the behavior as unattractive, as difficult, and as unsatisfying as possible. That way you're like, it's like what I was telling you about. Now that I don't have my credit card information, I can't do one-click shopping. So it makes it a little difficult for me to actually buy something online. And that's how we challenge and we break some of those bad habits. And then I see in the chat, I live far from work. I like to travel. Fuel is my bad habit. And I think it's so important for us to here again have compassion, right, with ourselves. I heard a voice.
Lay down.
So this is a piece where we're looking at our numbers. That's when we can also connect what we're seeing with what we like. We start identifying our priorities, right? And then within those priorities, we can see, hey, is this a good priority, right? Or is this priority hurting me in any way? Or is this too much of a priority? That's very common with travel, right? Sometimes I love to travel. I look at my finances and I see a lot of money going on travel. So then I can think of, how do I keep this priority, but how can I be more efficient with it, right? How can I make it more affordable? And just be mindful of those pieces. Any additional examples that you can think of any bad habits that you are breaking or you want to break, you want to share with the group? And I think as you work on the homework, some things might come up. So we can always come back to this piece next class. I do want to share, homework is for you, right? You don't have to bring it back. You don't have to send it my way. This is really up to you. And just like our financial journey, just like our financial plan, right? You are in the driver's seat. So I want you to really kind of identify what are those pieces that are going to be key for you in terms of your takeaways from the class. But also I encourage you to carve out time outside of class for you to work on your numbers, so that when we meet next time, you can share, hey, this is working, this is not. And also, for those of you that attend both sessions, you get immediate free access to Weave's Financial Empowerment Group, which is a monthly group where we meet to share more resources and share each other's progress within our financial plans. So we're going to have more spaces for you to continue working in this journey. Again, this is a marathon, not a sprint. When we're talking about habits, patience and compassion, right? This is a marathon, not a sprint. We do need to be very strategic though, because we don't have time to waste, and time is money. So I want you to be very strategic about those habits. So utilize these tools. Let me take a moment here, take a look at the chat. Eleanor shares, one of my new financial goals is to spend less on new clothes. I'll join that club. So before I go shopping for new clothes, I check my closet for new clothes that still have tags on them. Thus, it stops my shopping trip. Amen, Eleanor. That's such a good share. I would apply that to every single thing you're going to buy. Take inventory. Because even when we go grocery shopping, how many times have you gone grocery shopping? You don't have a list, and you end up buying something that you already have at home. Right? So taking inventory, period, before shopping, it's such a powerful habit. So thank you, Eleanor, for that beautiful share. So I know that a lot of the ground that we've covered thus far can seem a little overwhelming, right? Because it's all internal work. But I want to remind you of this kind of like the golden rule when it comes to our financial empowerment journey. Focus on what you can control. There's a lot of things within our financial life that are not within our control, right? Inflation, the political arena, the environment we live in, health conditions, right? Pandemic, social, environmental challenges. All of those pieces have a tight connection with our finances, have a deep impact in our finances, but unfortunately, we cannot control them. That's why the time and energy that you spend on them, it has to slowly kind of come down, so that you can use that time and energy to focus on what you can control, right? Your mindset, how you're responding to challenges, how you are proactively seeking for new sources of income, proactively speaking up about, hey, I need to charge more. I'm worth much more than that, right? I need to get paid properly. That is within your control. So every time that you're feeling overwhelmed, this is something that I really want you to take away from this class. Every time you're feeling overwhelmed, financially speaking, take a moment, take a deep breath, and focus on what you can control. Ask yourself, okay, cost of living is very high, for example, right? Cost of living is very high. I'm feeling stressed. Pause. What can I control? I can control my budget. I can go back to look at, okay, what can I tweak? I can control, hey, I realize that I have a lot of things that I'm not using. I might be able to sell, right? I might be able to test a business idea, right? Pursue a different business venture. And here, Tracy shared, when we feel we don't have time to cook or nothing in the house to cook, before going out, there are 3 of us, we instead take a minute to look through the cupboards, yes, and fridge, and we find stuff to make an unexpected creative meal, and it ends up being way better than going out. Absolutely. Absolutely. And talk about health, right? I like to say health is wealth. So when we cook at home, like we're taking control of our health, of what we put in our bodies, in our vehicles. That's such a wonderful example. I don't know if you've seen the show Chopped, the cooking show. I highly recommend it. Sometimes when I'm in that mindset of like, oh, I don't know, I want to cook, I want to eat out. Then I think of it, no, let's pretend you're in an episode of Chopped. Deal with what's in the freezer, what's in the fridge. So getting creative, it's one of those pieces that is within our control, right? Working with what we already have, that's within our control. Mhm. So now that we talked about mindset, habits, the habits that connect to our mindset and back up what we want to achieve with our financial life, now it's the time to talk about our numbers. And particularly that process of both facing and understanding your numbers. Why do you think that sometimes it can be challenging to face and understand our numbers? What barriers do you see on your way? Yes, Janice.
When it comes to numbers, I think my greatest challenge is more or less just being able to um have all the money that I need to cover everything at that time. It's easy for me to make the money. I make the money, but then there's this responsibility. And the biggest part for me had been, and I say had been because I've switched up my bad habits a little bit, was again just being able to grow a nest egg that would provide for my family and I outside of the financial obligations I have with running my own business and everything that goes into that part. So that was it, just finding some balance to where I could see myself saving it. It was never a worry for me that, or it's not a worry now that I can't make the money. I can make the money very easily. But yeah, that was it for me.
Thank you, Janice. And I also see Susan in the chat sharing, because they're low, right? Like when your numbers are very low, we don't want to see them,
Yep.
right? When we're not excited about what we're going to see, it's easier to pretend they're not there, right? It's easier to say, no, I'm gonna spare me the worry, spare me the trouble. However, let's go back to that name it to tame it mantra, right? If we don't see them, if we don't confront them, we're not going to be able to start making those changes we need to make to get to that financial space that we want to be in. And I think that that concept of focusing on what we can control can be very helpful when we're feeling that, right? When we're like, I know I'm not going to like what I see. That is where I encourage people, okay, we're going to take a look at them and we're going to pretend that those are not your numbers. We're going to pretend that you are a financial advisor, right? You're a money mentor to someone else. So that is when we can start looking at our numbers with much more compassion, right? And being much more objective. So if your best friend wants to tell you, hey, I'm having some financial issues, can you help me with my numbers? Pretend that you're looking at her numbers. And I guarantee you that you're not going to be as harsh, right? Because we're way harsher with ourselves than we are with those we love. So that can be a good exercise to think about when we want to face those numbers. So that's a very, very important step in the process, right? To make sure that, okay, why am I worried? So name it. I'm worried because I might not make ends meet. I'm worried because those numbers are not what I want to see. Okay, so let's identify, let's face them, and let's start being very objective about what's within my control. So that's what we're going to be talking about next. So again, in this process, I just want to remind you to be very compassionate with yourselves as we face your numbers, and very patient, right? Because sometimes for us to see the changes in our numbers takes time, right? So be very patient with yourself, but very proactive, right? Both patient and proactive. So when we think about our numbers, I think it's important for us to simplify as much as possible. Now here, before, actually, I'm gonna come back to share a little bit. Before we even look at our numbers, I want you to reflect on whether or not there is any way of thinking, any mindset piece that connects to numbers. For example, I've heard clients before share, I'm not good with numbers, right? That narrative can be very damaging because we're already putting ourselves, we're already not empowering ourselves to actually look at our numbers and learn how to understand them and learn how to manage them. This is something that we can learn, right? Numbers, at the end of the day, they are what I love about numbers. The reason why I went into a financial career was because numbers are universal, right? That's a beautiful thing about numbers, and they also don't lie. So if you want to, if you're like, oh my God, I feel like there's so much light, just look at numbers. Numbers are direct, concise. They tell you what you need to know. Sometimes it's not what we want to hear, but there's power to that piece. So the question is, how are we going to use our numbers, right? Instead of am I going to let my numbers affect me? How am I going to use those numbers? So be very careful with any mindset pieces that connect with numbers and in a negative way, right? Like, oh, I'm terrible at math, or I don't understand numbers. How can we change that, right? What do you need to learn? And also, what type of support do you need, particularly for business owners in the room? We usually encourage business owners to work with a bookkeeper, right? So that you're not doing this alone, and you leverage financial professionals. There's a reason why there are so many financial professionals out there, because this is meant to be teamwork in many occasions. So you're not alone in that journey. So now let's think very objectively. When it comes to your numbers, there are 4 main numbers that you should know, that you should be connected with. The first one, what you have, what you own. The second one, what you spent, how much money is going out. The third one, what you owe, our debt. How much is it? What type of debt? And lastly, what you make. So what you spend, what you make. So if we think about these 4 numbers as kind of the core of our financial journey, that simplifies a lot of things, right? Because that makes us much more aware of, okay, this is what I should be looking at. And then you can have a deeper dive into each of these categories to identify any habits, to identify any opportunities, and also to identify what's working, what's not working. So I'm going to encourage you to go through this part of our course together. Really go through it with that, pretending that you're helping a friend with her numbers, with his numbers, right? That is going to help you be much more compassionate with yourselves and stay objective. So the first area when it comes to numbers is our budget, right? So before we dive into the budget, I just want us to have a mindset check-in, be very honest with each other. What words and emotions come up when you hear the word budget? Very honest. You can share in the chat, you can unmute, just tell me those words that came up for you. Could be feelings, it could be, I see Araceli, difficult to stick to. Yes. Okay. And this again, this connects to our mindset, right? So it's important for us to start naming, okay, this is how I feel. And let's look at this and how do I change that, particularly when the words that come up are negative, right? Limiting, that's one that comes up often. Time consuming. And these are pieces I encourage you, write them down. Because ultimately, I want to make sure that we get to a space where we start using our budget as a tool that helps us to gain clarity about our financial life, but also it's a tool that we design. So when it comes to your budget, there's also this space. If looking at your current budget is something that is feeling stressful, overwhelming, you can also create a future budget, right? Work on what would be your ideal budget. And then we start comparing with our actual budget. And then we have kind of like that guiding North Star if we create a ideal budget. And so that's another way if you're feeling like, I don't want to work on my current budget. I want to start thinking, what type of budget do I want to have? That's also a good exercise to practice. Looking at the chat, more goes out than in, so can stick to one. Having family members jump on board and respect the budget seems difficult. Yes, that's why bring them to the class. And I think normalizing money conversations in the right settings can also help people understand the value of a budget. And engaging them in the creation of the budget can also be very valuable, because it's very different for us to stick to something we helped create versus to stick to something that somebody's telling us, hey, this is what you got to do. Right? So engage people in the process so that they feel more empowered to actually stick to that plan. Janice, how much revenue I have versus what I need and how much I will spend, how much I bring in. Yeah, you're thinking of, okay, what are these pieces, right? Feel like less than others in the family. And that one, we really want to challenge that, right? We really want to understand why we feel that way. If it's coming from us, how can we get support? Right? I think that sometimes in this piece, there's also psychological support that can be very powerful, because again, we're coming from a society where a lot of very toxic messages were ingrained in us, right? You're not worthy. You shouldn't talk about money. You're not invited to that conversation. You're not invited to the table. Those voices have an impact in us. So if this is something that you feel, I'm working on this, it's difficult, again, you're not alone. There are professionals that can help you change those narratives. Because ultimately, everyone has value, especially when you're talking about a family dynamic. It's very important for you to feel comfortable speaking up and for you to feel heard. And if then we're having a problem with the other people, then that's a them problem. So we need to send them to the right resources. And set boundaries. I think that's another piece that sometimes we don't talk about as much, but setting boundaries, right? Hey, there's pieces where someone in the family can even say, hey, you're not good with money. Don't speak to me that way. Who do you think you are? I'm going to ask you to not claim that. Who do you think you are to tell me what I'm good at and what I'm not? I'm taking this class. Are you taking this class? So always make sure that if something doesn't feel right, speak up. Because we have to create those environments for a healthy financial life to occur. So thank you. Thank you for naming this with me and for your openness and for your courage. I really, really value it. So when it comes to our budget, ultimately, it's important for us to think of a budget is a tool. A budget is a living financial document that should adapt to our life. It should adapt to our current reality, our current environment. So our budget is never set in stone, right? So when somebody's saying it feels like it's always changing, that's what it's meant to do. That's why it's important for us to touch base with that budget at least once a month. And in the budget, we're going to see two categories: what you make, what you spend. Those are the two numbers that we see in our budget. That's the use of the budget, to make sure that we can track those two components. So let's dive into each of these components so that we can start thinking about what's within my control. That's going to be the lens for this exercise. Here you see in your screen a budget sheet. in the email in the email that my colleague Diana sent your way, you have the handout there. I invite you to download it and you can customize it. It's a Word document, so you can write if those categories are not relevant to you, add the categories that are. And this is going to help you gain visibility, right? Be able to face those numbers and start identifying what is it that you like, what is it that you're like, okay, this is good, and what is it that you don't like, so that we can start identifying ways to change that. It's recommended that you check your budget once a month. Again, this budget sheet is just a suggestion. If you already have a system that works for you, stick to it. I just need you to have a system. I confess that every once in a while I do have my system online, but every once in a while I do love going through the pen and paper one. Like I love going through these handout because it's such an interesting exercise to actually like look at things and write them down, and it can be very it can create a lot of awareness in your financial life, and also it can make you feel gratitude for those things that you are actually able to pay, right? And the things that that give you the quality of life that you have. So it's important for us to also, when we're looking at our budget and we're looking at what we don't like about it, let's also think about a couple things that we do like about it. That can also help neutralize some of those negative emotions that we might have towards our budget. Another important piece is customize it, right? This is yours. If your budget doesn't feel yours, let's go back to the creation of good habits. If we don't have the motivation there, this is just decoration. So I really want you to take the time to customize it. And when you're looking at some of those categories, especially when there are things that you are saving for, things that are related to your goals, add them to your budget as categories, right? Even like my emergency savings, my travel fund, add that to that budget so that you're aware of, oh, I have these things. Sometimes we might not be able to put money towards them, but the fact that they are still there, they remind us, okay, this is where I'm heading, right? Sometimes patience, right? Sometimes things come in ebbs and flows, but you know that this is your budget. And lastly, just thinking about a budget as a tool that helps us plan how we're going to organize our money and how we can generate agreements, especially if we share finances with someone. And Susan is asking, how do you put in annual things by the month? I usually think of averages, right? Like, for example, you verify your car once a year. So what you can do is divide it by 12. And every month you can start setting money aside for those expenses that are coming up for your car. And then the month that you have to expense it, then you already have that money set aside. So that could be a good way. So thinking about what's within my control, right? What's within your control? The first thing is looking at our expenses. Our expenses can tell us a lot about our priorities. It can tell us a lot about what matters most to you, right? What makes you happy, or it can also tell you what you're experiencing. If you were to categorize all of your expenses, we need to be aware of which ones are our biggest categories. Sometimes those biggest categories are, okay, shelter, making sure that I pay my rent or my mortgage. Like those are expenses that at the end of the day, they're at the base of our needs, right? So those are good expenses. And when you start looking at other categories, this is where it's important for us to, again, be objective, right? And identify if any of those categories are wants or needs. Particularly when we're talking about wants, those are things that, like, for example, entertainment and things that we don't necessarily need. We're just excited for it. You're like, okay, I want that, right? And we don't think too much about it. We just spend money on it. And once you really look at these amounts in paper, the question we need to ask ourselves is, what else could you be using that money for? Because most of the time, there are things that we want much more. There are things that we actually need, but we're not prioritizing them because our wants are right there. And we live in a society where we're always being bombarded with, buy me, fix this, right? And all of these needs are created, but in reality, they're not needs. So we have to be very mindful of that. We have to be very careful with that concept of opportunity cost. So when you're looking at your expenses, take it as an opportunity to learn about yourself and to identify, hey, what's working here? What's not working? How do I want to redirect some of these funds, some of these wants into things that are much more meaningful to me? Mhm. And lastly, ask yourself when you're looking at those expenses, are those expenses within your control? Mhm. Because I guarantee you, even sometimes when people are like, oh no, yes, I already looked at it, I have to pay everything. None of that is within my control. Let's take a look, right? Because maybe sometimes, maybe you identify, okay, how much are you paying for your cell phone bill? Are there any other companies that are more affordable and give you better deals, right? That's within your control. Comparing services and products is always within our control. So that's another piece for us to be aware of, right? What's within my control? The type of products I use to spend my money. Like someone shared, right? Like if you use credit cards in a certain way, you can make money. You can get miles, you can get cash back, you can literally make money just by being very careful with how you spend your money. Being strategic about it. So here the caveat to this space is also the awareness on our habits and the connection of our habits and our expenses. They're supposed to be several motivation drivers that can influence our habits and therefore can influence our expenses, right? Pleasure and pain, fear and hope, acceptance and rejection. As you're looking at your expenses, particularly those unplanned expenses that are things that we want, it's important for us to reflect what was the motivation behind those expenses. For example, if you're looking at, hey, I spent a lot of money eating out last month with my friends, then when I look at those motivations, I'm like, maybe acceptance was behind that, right? Because they were all going. It's not like I'm going to say I am not going, right? So that was my motivation. How can I tweak that motivation, right? How can I better spend my money? And how can you use this information to better understand your spending, right? So that's where you can start thinking, okay, maybe next time I just share, right? Like I just share with my friends, hey, how about you all come to my place? We have a potluck, right? How about we do this instead, right? Opportunity cost. And naming those motivations can be very helpful, especially if there's any habits regarding your expenses that you want to break. So it's all about understanding ourselves, having that compassion, that awareness, and getting very, very proactive. And here I want to be mindful of time. I think this is going to be where we wrap things up with this homework for you. As you look at those expenses, I want you to think, what are some expenses that you could let go of? There's always a little something that we can let go of. So I'm going to invite you to go through that exercise with that in mind. And I would also add, if there are any expenses that you don't see in your budget that you want to have, let's add those as well. One example is self-care. Sometimes we don't spend money on self-care. And that's one piece that I've heard from clients. It's a priority, right? You got to take care of number one, right? If you are okay, then everything else, everyone around you is going to be okay. So as you look at your expenses, start thinking that way. Start thinking, okay, what do I want here? If I was to create my ideal budget based on what we have now, what am I not seeing? And what are things that I can let go of and put that money that I'm spending there to work? So this is where we're going to pick up next time to talk about income. So here, I think for homework, I want to invite you to continue reflecting on your financial past, right? Bring those conversations up to your family, to your friends, and start looking at your numbers, right? Start diving in. Also, if you have time to dive into the second handout, which is a balance sheet, where you start tracking everything that you owe and everything that you own, That's going to be very helpful for our conversation next class. So again, I encourage you to look at the 2 handouts that are numbers oriented, just for you to put everything there, so that when we're talking about it next class, you already have the tools there at your disposal. So with that said, this is the end of session 1 of our financial empowerment class. I'm very, very grateful to have you all here and very excited for you and your financial journeys. So I'm going to stay here for a few minutes. Let me pause the recording first.